Dear friends, it's a fairy tale time, so sit comfortably and get ready to listen Armenian fairy tale. Few words why I decided to choose Armenian fairy tale. Actually, I'm now in a really carpet mood, if it's possible to say, and of course it reminds me my trip to Armenia, which I took 3 years ago, or longer. Today I choose a story about Anait. This is very important story for Armenian folklore. So let's start. Once upon a time, Prince Vachigan, the king's son, was traveling on one of his many hunting trips with his brave and trusty servant Nazar and his faithful sheepdog Zanzi. They was very tired after the hunting, so they passed by the village and decided to sit down near the spring to rest. Just then, the girls of the village came to fetch the water. The prince was very thirsty and asked them for drink. One of the girls filled the jug and poured the water onto the ground. Then she filled the jug again and again, emptying it. Vachigan's throat was parched, but the girl went on and on, as so teasing him. She filled and emptied the jug 6 times, and then she finally handed it to him. Finally, he drank the jug and asked the girl, "Why did you let me drink right away? Were you playing with me, teasing me, or what?" "No," answered the girl. "We do not tease strangers in our village, by the way. But you were tired and hot, and cold water might have harmed you. I gave you time to cool off." The girl's words astonished Vachigan, and he was charmed by her beauty. And then he asked, "What is your name?" "Anait," said the girl. "Who is your father?" "Shepherd Aran." "But why do you want to know our names? Is it so terrible to ask?" "I suppose not, but then it wouldn't be so terrible for you to tell me your name and where you come from, right?" "Shall I tell you the truth or lie to you?" "Whatever you consider more worthy." "I consider it more worthy to tell you the truth, but the truth is that I cannot yet disclose my name." Saying goodbye to the king's son, Anait took her jug and walked away. The prince, his trusty servant, and his dog returned home. Vachigan's heart was heavy within him. His mother, the queen, came to him and asked, "Dear Vachigan, what's happened to you? What's make you sad, my son?" "Oh, dear mother, the pleasure of life holds no charm for me anymore. All I really want is to go back to the village where I met this beautiful girl and marry this shepherd daughter, Anait." The queen was very alarmed by the idea of her son to marry the shepherd daughter. She consulted with the king, and they decided that he would have a much better bride. But finally, king and the queen accepted the choice of Vachigan, and they sent their sons, faithful attendant Nazar, and 2 noblemen to the village where Anait was from. And they sent them to ask the shepherd Aran for the hand of his daughter. Aran received the visitors in a hospitable manner. The guests sat down on a carpet that Aran spread out for them. "Ooh, what a beautiful carpet," said Nazar. "Probably your wife made it." "I have no wife. She died 10 years ago. My daughter Anait wove the carpet." "Oh, wow! Even in the tents of our king there are no carpets as beautiful as this one. We are very glad to hear that your daughter is such an artist. But as you may understand, the king sent us here to talk things over with you. He wishes you to give your daughter in marriage to his only son, Prince Vachigan. The nobleman and Nazar expected that Aran would leap to his feet from joy of hearing this unexpected news, or at least at first refuse to believe in it. But Aran did neither. He bowed his head and followed the design of the carpet with his finger, remaining silent. And then Nazar told him, "Why do you seem so unhappy, my brother Aran? We've had brought you a very joyful news, so basically you need to reply us. Will you give your daughter to our future king or not?" "Dear guests," said Aran, "the truth is that I have no power to decide whom my daughter will marry. She must decide for herself. If she agrees, I have nothing against it." At that moment, Anait entered carrying a basket of ripe fruit and then sat down at her loom. The nobleman watched her closely, and they was astonished at the speed with which her fingers flew back and forth, waving their design. "Anait, can you stop for a second, please? I have important matters to discuss with you. See what gift the king sends you." He brought out silk dresses and precious jewelry. Anait looked at them casually and then asked, "And why should the king be so kind to me?" "The son of our king, Prince Vachigan, met you at the spring. You gave him water to drink and he liked you. And the king sent us to ask you to become his son's wife. This ring, this necklace and the bracelets, all these are yours if you agree." So the hunter at the whale was the king's son. He's a very nice young man. But let me ask you one thing. Does he know a trade? "Anait! He is a king's son. All citizens are his servants. He doesn't have to know any trade." "That is so. But even the master can at times be forced to become a servant. Everyone should know a trade, be he king or servant or prince." "Then you refuse to marry the king's son because he knows no trade?" "Yes. Take back all the presents you brought with you and tell the king's son that I like him well enough, but may he forgive me. I have sworn never to marry a man who knows no trade." They went home and reported everything to the king and king's sons. When the king and queen heard how Anait was answered, they were relieved and felt sure that Vachigan would change his mind about marrying a peasant girl. Instead, Vachigan said, "You know what? Anait is right. I must master some craft just like all other people." So the king had no choice but to call together his noblemen in a council, and they declared that the most fitting craft for the king's son to learn was the art of weaving gold cloth. They sent to Persia for a skilled craftsman, and in a single year Vachigan learned to weave cloth. He wove a piece for Anait out of precious golden threads and sent it to her. When Anait received his present, she said, "Tell the king's son I'm agree to marry him and take this carpet back to him as my present." The marriage celebration lasted 7 days and 7 nights, and everybody was ready to live happy ever after. But few years after the marriage, the best friend of Vachigan, Nazar, disappeared. Despite an extensive search, no trace could be found. Finally, all hope of ever finding him again was abandoned. Some years passed. The king and the queen both passed away. So Vachigan became a king and Anait became a queen. "Dear king, I notice that people say that everything is well in our kingdom. But what if they do not speak the whole truth? From time to time, perhaps, you should inspect the whole country yourself, going around, sometimes dressed as a beggar, and sometimes as a worker or merchant. You are quite right, my dear Anait. In the old days, when I used to go on my hunting trips, I knew the people far better. But how can I go away now? Who will rule the kingdom in my absence? I shall, and no one will ever know that you are absent. Then I will go tomorrow. If I'm not back in 20 days, you will know that something has happened to me, or that I'm no longer alive. So the king Vachigan, dressed as a common peasant, hit the road. Finally, he approached the city of Pirogi. In the outskirts of the city, the band of robbers suddenly attacked him. The robbers stole all the money and dragged him into a cave deep within the forest. The cave opening was bolted with an iron door. The head robber produced a huge key, opened the door, and threw Vachigan inside. Then he stepped in and a slammed iron door shut behind them. The head robber threw Vachigan against the cave wall and asked, "What craft, if any, do you know? I can weave such a precious cloth of gold that it's worth 100 times more than mere gold thread. Is your cloth really worth as much as all that?" "I'm not lying. Besides, you can always verify the price." "All right, so I shall. Now tell me what instruments and materials you need, and then you can start to work. But if your work isn't worth what you say, I will not only send you to the slaughterhouse, but have torture you first." The head robber marched outside the door and locked the door behind him. Finding himself in the darkness, Vachigan moved deeper inside the cave. He walked on for some time. Suddenly, a faint beam of light appeared ahead of him. Suddenly, a shadow moved towards him. As it came nearer, the shadow seemed to take the form of a man. Vachigan stepped forward and cried, "Who are you, man or a beast? If you are a man, tell me where I am." The shadow came closer, and he saw that it was a man. But he was so thin and bone-like that he looked more like a living skeleton than a man. "Follow me, I will show you everything, skeleton." He led the king down the wide corridor. A number of pale men sat working. Some were sewing, some were weaving, and some were embroidering. The guy who looked like a skeleton then explained, "That monster, that head robber who brought you there, got hold of us a long time ago. I don't know how long ago it was, because there is no day or night, only eternal darkness. Men who don't know any craft are killed after they are robbed. And the men who do know a craft have to work like slaves until the day they die." Vachigan looked at the man closely and recognized his dear and faithful servant Nazar. He didn't say anything to him, however, because he was afraid that the shock might kill the weak man. Soon a member of the robber band, a very tall man, delivered the requested materials to Vachigan, and he began to work. He wove a piece of marvelous gold cloth that was covered with designs, into which he wrote a full description of what had happened in the cave. Not everyone, however, would have been able to read the true meaning of a design. The tall robber was really pleased when Vachigan gave him the finished clothes. "I told your leader before that my clothes was worth 100 times its weight in gold. Between you and me, this particular piece is worth twice as much again, because I have incorporated certain magical talisman into it. It's a pity that not all will understand their true value. Only the wise queen Anait herself could know what this piece is really worth. Hearing this, the tall robber decided to say nothing about it to anyone, not even to his leader, to the head robber. Instead, the tall robber decided to secretly sell a piece of clothes to the queen herself and pocket the entire money. Meanwhile, the queen Anait ruled the country so well that all were satisfied, and nobody even suspected that the king was absent. But Anait was greatly worried. 30 days had now passed since her husband's departure, which meant that her husband was now 10 days delayed. In her dreams, she saw all kinds of misfortunes happening to him. One morning, she was told that the merchant has arrived from a foreign land and wanted to show her some very special clothes. She had him brought to her. The merchant bowed to the queen and handed her a piece of gold cloth folded on a silver tray. She glanced at it and, without examining the design, said, "What is the price for your clothes?" "Oh, glorious queen, it was 300 times its weight in gold. Just counting its materials and workmanship. As to my efforts in producing this treasure and bringing it to you, I trust you will value that as you please." "What? The cloth is as expensive as that?" "Oh, glorious queen, this cloth contains a mystic power. Do you see those designs? They are not just ordinary ones, but magical talismans. Whoever wears them will be happy forever." "Really?" smiled Anait, and spread out the cloth. She saw that there were no talismans on it, but a series of designs made of letters. She read them in silence, and this was a message the writing told her. "My incomparable Anait, I'm in a terrible situation. The man who brings you this clothes is one of the monsters who is keeping us in a cave. Nazar is here with me. Search for us in the east of the city Pyrogi, in a cave marked by the iron door that lies near the lake. Hurry up, for without your help we shall all perish soon. Vachigan." Anait read the message twice, pretending to admire the designs, and then she said, "You're right. Only this morning I was in a deep grief. But since I saw these designs, I feel happy again. Your clothes is priceless, and I'm ready to give half of the kingdom for it. But, as you know, no creation can be of more value than its creator." "Oh yes, dear queen, but I don't know who made these clothes. I bought it in India from a merchant who bought it from another merchant, so I have no idea. I don't know. I couldn't bring you the master who made it." "Enough! I know who you are. Guards, seize this man and throw him into a prison." When the man was led away, Anait ordered the alarm to be given. The citizens, whispering anxiously to each other, gathered at the palace. No one knew what was happening. Anait came out of the balcony and said, "Citizens, the life of our king in a great danger. All who love him must follow me. By noon we must be in Pyrogi." In an hour, everybody was on horses and ran toward the village. They arrived to the entrance of the cave and saw this big iron door. They approached the iron door once, twice, but the door couldn't be opened. So Anait distributed dozens of tools and ordered all the citizens to chip away at the stone around the cave door. With so many hands at work, soon one hole appeared clear through the stone, then another and another, and then the holes were enlarged. Finally, Anait's horse forced through the weakest stone in between the holes. Then it was an easy matter to remove the door entirely. "Come closer, people! See what is behind those doors!" A terrible sight made the gaze of the citizens. Men who looked more like a ghost than living beings crawled out of a terrible cave. Blinded by the light, they fell on the ground. The last to come out were Vachigan and Nazar, supporting each other in their weaknesses. Anait warriors carried out those who could not walk. Anait knew that the robber band and its leader must be hiding deep within the cave. Nazar advised her where she would find them. Shortly, she and her warriors emerged from the cave, dragging along behind their horses the members of the robber band. Each one was securely tied with a rope. Anait rushed to the tent where Vachigan and Nazar had been brought. She sat down next to her beloved husband. The faithful servant Nazar, weeping, kissed the queen's hand and said, "Oh, great queen, you saved us today." "You mistaken, Nazar," said Vachigan. "She saved us years ago, on the day when she asked you whether the son of your king knew any trade." The story of Vachigan adventure spread to all the cities and villages of the kingdom. Even in other lands, people talk of them and praised Vachigan and Anait. That is how the story of Vachigan and Anait lived through the ages and survived until our day. Happy end. Have a wonderful day. One love.